You ever walk into a hospital and your world stops? My heart pounded. My wife had just given birth, but something went horribly wrong. She was in ICU, hooked up to machines, gasping. I saw tubes, monitors, alarms. And I felt rage at the unfairness. Rage that life could bring someone you love so close to death. I stood there, feeling helpless. But in that moment, I made a decision. I would not let fear win. I would not accept being powerless. I swore to myself, when I reach her side, I will fight not just for her health, but for justice. That's where my story begins. Pain, urgency, and what I did when I realized my revenge would be with action, not anger. The basics first. My wife was healthy, pregnant, eager for our child. We prepared everything. But complications came. Doctors said there was infection, risk to both mother and baby. The baby was delivered early. My wife's organs struggled. The ICU team worked round the clock. I was terrified. The newborn in one crib, my wife in another room. I felt split in two. Part of me wanted to collapse, to cry. But another part, louder, stronger, demanded, "What can I do? How can I control some part of this?" That question was the start of my revenge. Not against a person, but against the situation, the odds. First, I learned everything. Asked doctors questions. What caused this infection? What treatments are possible? What risks are they taking? I studied medical records, lab reports. I got second opinions. I refused to rely on vague assurances. I wanted clarity. I needed understanding. Because knowledge is power. When you know what you're facing, solutions become visible. I also learned what protocols the hospital was supposed to follow. I checked if any malpractice or negligence might have contributed. I enlisted help, a lawyer just to review things, a friend who was a nurse to explain medical terms. I built a small team around me. Then I acted. I insisted on the best specialists. I pushed for the most rigorous treatments. When antibiotics weren't working fast enough, I requested alternatives. When monitoring was delayed, I asked for urgency. I became the advocate. I refused to be silent. Each day I was in ICU, I pushed doctors, I questioned nurses, I demanded updates. Some saw me as annoying. Some saw me as challenging. But I didn't care. My wife's life was not a game. I fought for her. I stayed awake nights. I sat beside her, held her hand, read her reports. I made sure she was comfortable. I made sure no mistake was trivialized. There were moments of despair. When machines beeped, when her skin turned pale, when doctors said, "We're doing all we can." I saw fear in their eyes. I almost broke. But then I remembered why I came. I thought about our child, about promises. I thought about future birthdays, laughter, seeing her smile again. That gave me strength. I grieved, yes, but I also planned. I visualized recovery. I asked the doctors, "What are next steps? What can be prevented so this doesn't happen again?" I refused to accept anything less than full effort. Gradually, things changed. The infection responded. The baby's lungs strengthened. My wife's vitals steadied. She breathed easier. The ICU monitors showed progress. Doctors told me she might make it. Nurses smiled at me in new ways. Not pity, respect. I realized I was not fighting alone. The medical team, my supporters, my family, everyone pulled together. My revenge became healing. It wasn't about revenge in the traditional sense. It was about turning pain into push, turning fear into force. I used the anger at helplessness to drive action. Then deeper lessons came. I saw how systems often fail people who don't push. How assumptions are made. How sometimes hospital staff dismiss family concerns. I saw gaps. Communication, timing, accountability. I learned that being present matters, not just physically, but mentally. Asking questions, being informed, insisting on clarity. I saw how power works in hospitals. Who gets heard? Who is ignored? I realized that people who speak up can shift decisions, and that silence can cost lives. So part of my revenge was ensuring her voice was honored, her suffering seen, advanced insights. Advocacy becomes part of healing. When you advocate hard, You also help others. I started talking to other families. I shared what I learned about rights, about what to demand from medical teams. I flagged issues in that hospital. I worked with patient support groups. I asked hospital administration, could you improve these ICU protocols? Could there be better infection control? Could families be included more in decision-making? I saw improvements, and I saw empowerment for myself and for others to be why the time she exited ICU, she was weak but alive. The baby cried. I held both in my arms. I thought about the promise I made in the hallway, the promise to fight. I thought about the revenge I'd taken not by hurting someone but by refusing to be victim. I thought about turning that darkest moment into strength. Others saw my wife's recovery, but what they didn't always see was every night I stayed, every question I asked, every refusal to settle for less. What I did was claim dignity in crisis. If you ever face something like this, someone you love fighting for life, don't wait for someone else to do the heavy lifting. Be their voice. Be their advocate. Gather knowledge. Demand accountability. Stay present. Turn your anger into action. And no, real revenge isn't about hurting back. It's about rising. It's about showing that love, care, action can win even when everything seems stacked against you. When I left the hospital, I carried more than relief. I carried pride, love, resilience. Let your hardest moments become your strongest stories. When I finally sat at home, holding my wife on one side and our newborn on the other, silence wrapped the room. It wasn't the heavy silence of the ICU, filled with beeping monitors and rushed footsteps. It was soft, alive, full of breaths we almost lost. I thought about every step that had led here, the panic racing through my veins when I first heard ICU, the anger that made me stand tall instead of collapse, the nights of research, the endless questions, the awkward conversations with doctors who weren't used to being challenged. I realized that what people call revenge in moments like these isn't about hurting someone. It's about reclaiming power when life tries to steal it. I replayed the scenes over and over. The doctor's face when I asked for a second opinion, the nurse's nod when I thanked her at dawn, the moment I slipped that little knit hat over my baby's tiny head. Those memories taught me something bigger than survival. They taught me about presence. Real presence is more than being in a room. It's noticing details, reading between words, stepping in where silence could cost everything.